People, I don't know if people don't really talk about this. One day before the Nakba, people don't know. What happened one day before the Nakba? Egypt, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, all invaded Israel to kill everybody there.
So I've got a book by Ilan Pape, who is a Jewish Israeli scholar, from the chapter "The Palestinians Voluntarily Left Their Homeland," which is on page 53. He explains why what Ethan Klein is describing here is a grotesque myth and revisionist history. If you didn't know, Hasan was featured in GQ magazine, where he talked a lot about internet culture. I found the article to be quite interesting, although I was pretty surprised when I was reading it. If you didn't know a lot about the internet, it would have sounded just like complete gibberish. There was so much in there that needed context and backgrounds, and I think that was with intent. I think GQ was trying to be like, here's the wild world of online spaces that you might not know anything about, and here's how wacky the whole thing can be. And yeah, it was pretty wild to see. But everyone knew that as soon as, you know, Hasan got a very, let's just say, kind or flattering article in GQ, that Ethan Klein was going to get very upset about it, because that kind of seems to be what happens. Now, the weird thing was, in the article, Hasan brought up how he feels that Ethan Klein might have a psychosexual obsession with him and his body. And obviously, that's something that Ethan Klein wanted to disprove in his live broadcast that he ended up doing about the GQ article. The quote from the article says, "He talks about my body and the way I look a lot. I never thought he cared about that sort of thing. And maybe after he lost his weight, his personality changed a bit. The last time I talked to Ethan, he was fat, but at least he was more empathetic." So that leads us to the episode itself. Ethan Klein rants about Hasan.
Happened on 5 different occasions where somebody sitting next to him happened to see nudes on his phone. That is not normal behavior.
I don't know.
That is not normal. That's never happened to me once, okay? And sure, I'm ugly and fat or whatever.
You're ugly and fat.
So girls aren't sending me all their nudes. But like 5 different times. It happened on here. You know what? Since you guys want to be combative on this, let's just pull it out.
No.
Yep,
No.
we're doing it.
No.
Oh my God.
No.
Yeah, we're doing it. Of course, obviously.
The staff does not sound stoked. Also, I've never heard Hasan levy those kind of charges at Ethan. I've never heard anyone on the left do it. Everyone on the left is just like, can you please stop trying to spread Zionist propaganda while there's a genocide of Palestinians happening? That's what a lot of people take, you know, obviously issue with. No one's talking about your looks or, you know, how many women are interested in you sexually or any of that kind of stuff.
She's in a meeting. She's not available right now.
All right, check here. I got this.
If you're also kind of new to all this and you're confused as to what's happening, so he's got a button that he installed in his studio. So if you're someone who, like, you know, Ethan or myself does live streams, you're speaking into a microphone in front of an audience of people, right? Granted, mine is just a micro size fraction of the size of his audience, but nonetheless, the problem that he's been having a lot for the last couple of years has been that he is unable to not say a lot of the horrifying things out loud that he must say just in private. You know, things like slurs, very offensive statements. They could be homophobic slurs. They can be N-words. Like he just dropped the N-word the other day. So what they did was they installed this button, and the button is something that he can push. That when he pushes the button, it will stop whatever he just said that was the naughty thing. He calls it going goblin something, or when he's basically being a little too spicy or edgelord, aka like racist. He pushes the button, and then all of a sudden you'll see the oh, we'll be right back, blah blah blah, and then that allows them to not have what he just said air publicly. Yeah, so that thing.
One sec here.
Like Steven Crowder's button? No. Steven Crowder's button is a button that he pushes and then a light comes on and his co-hosts are supposed to laugh at what he says, so he always feels like he's the funniest person in the room. Ethan Klein's is to me just make sure if he says something that they don't want to get out there live on air, then it can actually just cut the feed, and then that there's a difference between when I'm saying something out loud and you hear it. I think the gap is probably about 30 seconds. So what I'm saying right now in 30 seconds, you're going to hear me say. So you're actually listening to me in the past, even though I'm talking out loud right now in the present. It's wild, you know, relativity, all that kind of stuff. And then at that point, you type something out to respond, and then I read it and I respond to you. And so he has the technology, which I don't have, right? So I have to really watch what I say. But he has the technology to basically cut that gap, and then all of a sudden be like, okay, no one heard him say that. We're good.
Stand back and stand by. You guys are gonna like this. Is good, I promise. All right. Can you put that in Discord? I shared a document with all the links and stuff. That's all the good parts, though. Where was the picture in the bathtub from? Is that just on social media?
That's from the article.
I shared the document with you. I can't copy and paste for some reason with the doc. Yeah.
What?
All right, here we go. So, like by itself, it's one thing, but as a trend,
What?
I personally find it disturbing.
Now, I don't know what happened there in terms of like, why didn't they push the button right there? Don't worry, I'm going to go through the documents. We're going to see the documents, because what he actually revealed right there was that their shows, and I know this is surprising to some people, are scripted, as in pre-planned, which is also kind of wild to me. Like, they're shitty as they are, and yet you guys have an entire script and a layout with all these links and stuff prepared. Wow, that is that's pretty wild. But either way, you got the show's notes. They accidentally got leaked there. Now, behind him, you'll see the co-host of Sex Pestiny, Dan Saltman. This little button in the corner here, that's his company. And so this is supposed to be, I'm assuming this is just like a green screen picture, right? But the actual buttons in front of him, you could have slammed the button right there. And then, again, no one would have ever seen this. And these leaked notes wouldn't have been part of now the, you know, the public laughing. But we can go through them a little bit. I'm sorry, but Ethan Klein is insane for writing this shit. This is legit, like, sad. No one on the crew can reel him in. Let's see what they said. Most of us have seen the bro tips from the early days of Hasan's time and his uncle at the Young Turks, and Hasan has successfully explained this as being super old, which it is, and him playing a character. Play the clip. Yes, it's old, but has he changed, or has he just gotten better at concealing it? Has he become even more dangerous, misogynist, shielding himself as the guise of a leftist, enlightened feminist? He claims that he's playing a character. If so, he is a terrific method actor, because he seems to be still playing that character today. Now, talk about the inappropriate contact with his fans. Hasan is jokingly asking for nudes here, but it seems like not everyone thought he was kidding. Turns out his fans were sending him nudes. A lot of nudes. Times he's shown nudes to people accidentally. The Cosmo article scrolls down to the exact quotes. Once with Pokemon sitting there. You mean Pokemon? QT overseeing the nudes. Once with Ludwig. His boyfriend says he was kicked his mom out to sleep with a stripper. Miskiv says he saw tons of nudes on Hasan's phone. The first problem I have with this is just, why is Hasan in cold DMs talking with a bunch of women anyway? That's just a weird dynamic to begin with, compounded with the fact that he's apparently collecting all of their nudes on his phone. I have a policy of never chatting in my cold DMs with fans because it's just an uneven and strange relationship where one person is so enchanted by the other and way more vulnerable and suggestible. Also, seeking out convos with people that are enthralled by you is kind of psycho cult leader that needs validation. Next, using Discord to seek validation from fans. And it's not just in his DMs where he seeks validation. Oh no, he also uses his Discord to satisfy his constant need for adoration. Include his Discord messages, like telling them he's going to kill himself if people don't watch. When he told his Discord that he was going to kill himself for low views, extremely manipulative, more shaming them to support him harder. Might I don't know, been a joke, but I digress. The body count. By the way, This one's really bad for beating the I have a unhealthy obsession with Hasan stuff. I just gotta say. I don't know if it's Ethan who prepares the script for every episode or if it's the staff. If you're making the staff do this, that's weird too. I'm sorry, there's no good look here. This is just profoundly bizarre behavior. But anyways, here we go. Hasan seems to view women as a conquest. He must sleep with as many of them as possible to validate his manliness. Ironically, this is the same type of toxic trait you see from people like Fresh and Fit. Here are the links for proof. Hasan brings to Ludwig about the women he's slept with. Hasan's best friend jokes that he's kicked them all out to sleep with strippers. Hasan being genuinely mean to Discord chatters. What does that have to do with the telling his audience to brigade negative posts on LSF. He is having video sex with fans, and then says he doesn't know how to act when ugly girls say hi. Here's a YouTube clip from his channel. The brothel incident. As someone who clearly does not have a hard time finding sexual partners, why would he feel the need to pay for sex by visiting a brothel? There's a power dynamic here of having the money and being able to tell her what to do. It's one thing to support sex workers like he claims to, but it's another to actually go and participate in the sex trade. He also has a strange obsession with porn stars. Janice Griffith. For example, he briefly dated the popular adult film star Janice Griffin, a relationship that ultimately ended with them, just going to add, Janice uses they them pronouns, so I'll have to do corrections here, with them being disgusted by him. Allegedly, he called in a wellness check with the LAPD, despite their friend telling him repeatedly that they are fine. Janice was so disturbed by this event that they later claimed that they never wanted to hear about him again. Oh my god. What? Dun, dun, dun. I don't even totally remember all, like, this is going so far back, but, like, again, first off, putting this all together because he was featured in a GQ article, that profoundly fucking weird behavior going down here, gotta say, across the board. This is strange, bizarre. But I believe they were his ex-partner at one point. Like, they dated. And that was the reason why I think they were on a show. I think that's one of the reasons why they had a couple episodes together. I don't know enough, unfortunately, beyond that, you know, to tell you about what actually took place. Mia Malkova. He had another run-in with the popular adult film star Emil Malkova, where his friend Will Neff set them up on a date. How dare he? Here's a clip, and the clip is titled, "It was immediately awkward as Hasan was unable to talk to her about anything but sex, which seemed to make her even more uncomfortable. At one point when Hasan left and was in the other room watching, his friend Will did some light flirting with Mia." What? This made Hasan so insecure that he actually threw a tantrum and fled the scene, ruining the stream, which then ended immediately afterwards, and leaving everyone feeling awkward and bewildered. Now let's talk about his predator friends. Recently, his very close friend Lolo was outed as being a creep. Yes, he was, and it is good that he was outed and that people are definitely calling him out and that no one wants anything to do with him. And Hasan was quit with him dropping completely. Wait, Hasan was quit with dropping him completely. Did you mean quiet? Probably quiet. Hasan was quiet. Okay. But how does he treat his predator friends with there is no... Who wrote this? Sorry, I'll try my best. But how does he treat his predator friends with there is no one watching to give him social credit for the performative behavior, one must ask, behind the scenes? One of his best friends that he plays basketball with regularly is a known rapist. Best friend is a known rapist. Really? Why does he remain friends with someone credibly accused of rape, but drops Lolo immediately and completely for being a creep? Lolo is without a doubt a total creep who should be called out and shamed, but the other dude remains with him is a literal rapist. I don't know who that is, but I mean, if true, yeah, that's fucked up. I don't know who the person he's being accused of. Again, this is lore deeper than my personal research or knowledge. But then Hasan defends himself. Hasan says in the Cosmo article he accidentally opened a cold fan DM, but with nudes. How? Here's a link. I think that's all we have, unless there's more. The bro tips, the nudes. Yeah, so that's the extent of the leaked transcript. Oh, there is more. Does it go beyond that? No, that's all we have so far. Oh, there's more. Jesus. How did all of this get loot? More misogynistic creep shit. denying the October 7th rape, attending a Diddy party, sexualizing women news reporters and officials. Is he friends with a rapist the Diddy plays basketball with? Compared white women taking Asian husband's last name to white girls saying the N-word in interracial porn. I would get Destiny laid all the time if we lived together. Cosmopolitan article says he saw nudes on his phone. I mean, I don't know how you're ever going to beat the obsession fucking accusations when these are literally things that you have written out. Praising the body count, more clips, jank, more clips. Porn star prank gone wrong. He was pranked into thinking that he was going to sleep with porn star, and then got pissed when he realized it wasn't going to happen. Referring to nudes, overly dynamic fans, getting bro tips from 2003, 90% of the women, blah, 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 women's fantasies. His granddad is a landlord. His granddad is a landlord. I'm just going to throw out a theory, an internet theory, if you will, that I think because he is working directly and being sponsored by Dan Saltman, someone who is a obvious co-host with Sex Pestiny, that Dan is preparing him perhaps a amount of documents. I mean, I have no evidence towards that, but it does seem like there's a lot of old clips that have been farmed here that are a lot of the same arguments that I've heard from, again, that side of the internet, obviously, when they speak about Hasan. Addressing nepotism and complaining that he was paid below minimum wage. Quote, heavily exploited by Jank. Oh, I know this clip. Okay, fine. I can actually reference this one. Yeah, I don't think that was a bad thing. He was basically telling the story in an interview in a podcast, how when he was working for Jank and TYT, how he felt that he was being exploited, how he had actually invented ideas and segments that actually went really viral. This is something we've heard from a lot of people who used to work at TYT, where they would actually have ideas and they would do things and they would actually ask afterwards, I got this really, really good idea. I did this clip. And then I started a series, and that series is really popular. It's getting thousands of tens of thousands of views. You're generating lots of income from that. Can we talk about profit sharing or stuff like that? And then you'd obviously be rejected. That's one of the reasons Benjamin Dixon has stated similar stories, as have other people who have left the network based on this. Second part of the story. So I saw Noah Samson has returned to the twitter.com and was calling out one of the co-hosts of Ethan Klein and his show, AB. And AB was replying to someone then saying, I raised $100,000 for Palestinian children, and I continue to talk about the genocide consistently on stream. I don't think you understand that H3 isn't my show. Call it a cop-out. I don't give a fuck. I don't care what any of y'all think about me. I care about the Palestinians. Noah Samson responded, the only action you could take to even begin to work against the harm that you've caused by enabling your pro-Israeli propagandist bros in front of millions of people daily for the entirety of the genocide is to quit your job. And then Hutch responds to the response. This would make sense if Ethan was an actual rabidly anti-Palestinian Israeli nationalist. He's very obviously not that. So the only conclusion I can come to here is that Noah is legitimately delusional. To which Overzealous replies, I know, it's just response after response after response, but this is the internet. Nah, Ethan propagates Zionist talking points that are to the right of even former Israeli foreign ministers and self-proclaimed ardent Zionists. He's undeniably a propagandist for a country engaging in a genocide. I think a lot of this is related to this clip, which is basically Ethan Klein describing what he believes to be the precursors for the Nakba, and getting what I would say is just non-existent pushback from AB in the process.
One day before the Nakba, I don't know if people don't really talk about this. One day before the Nakba, people don't know. What happened one day before the Nakba?
Palestinians were living at home?
What?
I said Palestinians were living at home?
Well, sure.
Yep.
And you know what else happened? Egypt, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, all invaded Israel to kill everybody there. They unilaterally, there was 5 Arab countries that unilaterally unified to invade Israel and kill every fucking person there or remove them forcibly. It was the invading fucking Arab armies that told the Palestinians to leave and come back when the war was over. They thought they were going to steamroll all the Jews living there. They didn't. They lost the war, and a lot of the Palestinians who were told to leave and come back never got to come back home. Now a lot of Palestinians did stay in Israel, and those people are citizens today. 2 million plus of them live in Israel proper, which I think is the correct term, not Greater Israel, which is something else. It's funny. There's a clip of Frogan even saying, like, my family lost their house in the Nakba. They were told to leave. They were told to leave and come back.
Yeah.
So, like, There's important fucking context there.
I'm gonna use some sources here. So I've got a book by Ilan Pape, who is a Jewish Israeli scholar, from the chapter "The Palestinians Voluntarily Left Their Homeland," which is on page 53. He explains why what Ethan Klein is describing here is a grotesque myth and revisionist history. This was a trick. The talk was a voluntary transfer, and the strategy was incremental until the opportunity emerged for massive transfer in 1948. Even if you accept Benny Morris's thesis in his book, The Birth of the Palestinian Refugee Problem, the transfer was in practice incremental and not massive. After a certain number had been reached, however, incrementally the result is still a massive ethnic cleansing, of which more will be said later. From the minutes of the June 1938 meeting, we learned that the language of voluntary transfer was actually meant to be compulsory. Ben Gurion stated that carrying out a compulsory transfer, especially if the British did it, would be the greatest achievement in the history of Jewish settlement in Palestine. He added, quote, "I favor compulsory transfer. I see nothing unethical in it." Menachem Ushisikin, a prominent leader and ideologue, added that it was the most ethical to transfer the Arabs out of Palestine and resettle them in better conditions. He hinted that this was probably the logic behind the Balfour Declaration. Moreover, no time was wasted in beginning the discussion about the numbers and the means of achieving them. These matters wouldn't be finalized until 1948, but the foundations were laid in 1938 meetings. A very small minority of those attending objected to compulsory transfer. Syria was the preferred destination, and the hope was to be able to move at least 100,000 Palestinians in the first wave. The discussion about transfer was put on hold during World War II as the community focused on increasing the number of Jewish immigrants and establishments for a future state. The conversation was reignited when it became clear that Britain was about to leave Palestine. Now, I'm going to play the quote that Ilan Pape actually said at the UN in relation to this, but I took a bunch of notes and then tried to break down some of the timeline of this beforehand. One of the things that's really, really important to understand if you're going to talk about how, the war that took place in 1948, for example, this revisionist history that he's saying and kind of painting a picture that it was a whole bunch of different Arab countries that suddenly banded together to try and either ethnically cleanse Jews or target Jews or just attack all at once against the Jewish community that was currently occupying Palestine, leaves out a lot of history. So before 1947, and again, this is coming from the book 10 Myths About Israel, Palestine was under British rule. From 1917 to 1948, Britain controlled Palestine, which was under the League of Nations mandate. Palestinians were the majority, Muslims, Christians, and small Jewish communities living together. Britain encouraged Zionist immigration from Europe, especially after World War II. This creates tensions as Zionist leaders openly aim for Jewish majority states. Palestinians organized politically to demand independence, but Britain suppresses the uprisings like the Great Revolt of 1936 and 1939, which kills thousands. In November of 1947, the UN partition plan is announced. The UN votes to split Palestine into two states, one Jewish, one Arab. The problem are that Jews are 1/3 of the population and own less than 7% of the land, but the UN gives them 55% of the territory. Now, this is rejected by Palestinians and the Arab nations. Palestinians reject the plan as an unjust land theft. Zionist leaders accept it strategically while already planning to expand beyond it. Then, in December of 1947 into May 1948, the Civil War phase begins, which we're again completely leaving out before we get to the events of the Nakba. Fighting begins right after the UN vote. Zionist militias attack Palestinian towns and neighborhoods, aiming to clear the key areas before the British withdraw. They call this Operation Plan D, which takes place in March of 1948, a military plan for taking Arab towns, expelling inhabitants, and destroying villages to prevent return. Then there's all these horrifying massacres that take place, like the massacre of Deir Yassin. This is one of the few ones that we actually have information about that includes horrifying atrocities like mass rapes, taking women and children and forcibly having them remove their clothes, taking photographs of them, mutilations as well. A lot of this was done obviously to strike terror and fear into a lot of Palestinian communities, which caused a lot of them to start leaving in advance, obviously terrified to think of what happens if again these militias arrive in their town or area. By May 14th of 1948, before any of the Arab armies had arrived, over 300,000 Palestinians have already become refugees. Then on May 14th, 1948, Israel declares statehood. The Zionist leaders declare the state of Israel on land taken by force. The Palestinians see it as colonization of their homeland, not independence. And then the Nakba, also known as the catastrophe, intensifies. On May 15th, 1948, Arab armies enter. Armies from Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq enter. Here's what's important, though. They are divided and have different goals. They were not uniquely united in this idea that every single one of them simply wanted to expel Jewish people from that area. They had different goals and strategies. This is what they were doing. I'll let Ilan Pape explain it better than I can in this clip that he was speaking to the United Nations.
In February 1948, the forces of the Jewish community in Palestine began, regardless of what was happening here in the United Nations, began a process that I called in my book in 2007 of ethnically cleansing the Palestinians. In April 1948, most of the Palestinian population that lived in Palestinian towns, or the mixed Arab-Jewish towns of Palestine, were expelled or forced to leave. And we are talking about more than 150,000 Palestinians who lived in the urban space of Palestine, who became refugees even before the British Mandate of Palestine on the 15th of May ended. These expulsions from the city were accelerated by acts of massacres, the most known of them, the massacre of Deir Yassin on April the 9th, 1948. So even before the Arab League decided to send military forces in order to try and save the Palestinians on May the 15th, 1948, 250,000 Palestinians were already refugees. And the presence of these refugees in the Arab world forced the Arab governments to do something, although most of them were quite reluctant to participate in any kind of military adventure in Palestine. While the Israeli forces, we should call them now the Israeli forces after the establishment of the State of Israel on May the 15th, 1948, while the Israeli forces were fighting against these contingents from the Arab world, the ethnic cleansing of Palestine continued. The Palestinian villages in the middle of Palestine, in the south, in the north, were all exposed to a tactic that was already articulated by the Jewish forces in a plan that was adopted on the 10th of March 1948. The plan described exactly how the Palestinian villages should be encircled, forced to leave, or evicted by force should this flight not happen. The worst chapter in the Nakba came in October 1948 during the operation that the Israelis called the Hiram operation in the north of Galilee. Even some of the leaders of the Jewish community themselves wrote in their diaries that what the Israelis did in October 1948 was not very different from what the Nazis did in the Second World War. This operation was the toughest because the Palestinians already knew what awaited them, and they were putting a tough resistance, which had led to a list of war crimes and atrocities that completed the ethnic cleansing in Palestine. So within 9 months, half of Palestine's population was expelled, half of Palestine's villages were demolished, and most of the Palestinian towns were wiped out.
Now, in terms of the timeline, too, by December of 1948, that's when the UN calls for return. That's probably, you've heard it before, the UN Resolution 194, and that affirms the right of Palestinians to return to their homes, but that is refused by Israel, which is why there's been 750,000 Palestinians who have been displaced, or were displaced as a result, So the Nakba wasn't a side effect of the war. It was a deliberate campaign of ethnic cleansing in order to create a Jewish majority state. The myth that Arab leaders told Palestinians to leave hides the fact that Zionist expulsions, massacres, and destructions forced the people out, and the struggle of Palestinian emancipation is about reversing the results of the ethnic cleansing and ending the ongoing system of dispossession. And to try and reframe the entire thing as that this was a team of Arab countries that specifically banded together to uniquely target Jews is again a form of historical revisionism of the Nakba. That's not to leave out the fact that were there people within those countries that may have hated Jewish people? Of course there could have been, but that's not the point. The point is that these nations were responding to what was currently taking place to Palestinians because the British were about to leave. Like if you look at the history and the timeline, and that's why I think learning about this kind of stuff is so fascinating. It's because this has been about land transfer so many different times, usually by big empires. Like World War I is a war between all these big empires, and at that time, that part of the world is controlled by the Ottoman Empire, and then the British Empire then reaches out to Arab nations saying, "Will you unite with us to try and take on the Ottoman Empire? We have a common enemy. If you do this, we will then reward you with a whole bunch of your own nation states." And so these Arab nations and these Arab people do team up with Britain. They defeat, ultimately, the Ottoman Empire. This is one of the reasons why there are films in Hollywood like Lawrence of Arabia, etc. And then by the time the Balfour Declaration gets announced by Britain, this is kind of a way in which the British Empire fucks over the people who live in that region in Palestine by announcing that they want to create a permanent settlement for Jewish people in that part of the world. The reason for that is multifaceted. There were some people, and there were some, there was a strange alliance of different groups back then between, both advocates for Zionism within Europe, but also with very far-right figures in Britain who also had this idea of putting Jewish people in that part of the world specifically because they were Christian fundamentalists who thought that if Jewish people were in that part of the world, then it would secure the second coming of Jesus Christ on earth. And that moves forward towards, this period that we're talking about now, in which when the British were finally deciding that they were going to be withdrawn from that part of the world, but there had already been a large establishment and colonization of Jewish and Zionist forces that had also been armed by both Britain and Western nations. Once Britain left, those same factions realized that they had the most powerful militaristic force in that part of the world and could achieve some of their goals of ultimately doing this mass ethnic cleansing, this forced expulsion, which they did do, which then led to all these Arab nations deciding that they had to take action for a variety of different reasons, but effectively try and stop what was taking place before them. And it wasn't all benevolent, by the way. I just want to say that, like, some nations, like Jordan, for example, wanted to acquire the West Bank because they felt that they had territorial claim to that part of the world as well. So either way, though, this wasn't a matter of them simply doing it because they hated Jewish people uniquely and then all of a sudden wanted to expel them from that part of the world to cleanse them, but then the Israel defense forces ended up fighting them back. That's the revisionist version that you get by people who want to promote this ongoing colonial project rather than tell the full story. Noah's also going after Hutch. I didn't know, when did this happen? Hutch never seemed to be someone who's, aggressively right-wing. He kind of seemed to just be kind of your typical liberal Democrat, but, he's also posting a lot about this. When he was said that this would make sense if Ethan was an actual rabidly anti-Palestinian Israeli nationalist, he's very obviously not that. So the only conclusion I can come to here is that Noah's legitimately delusional. Noah responded by saying, I certainly don't take advice on what constitutes anti-Palestinian racism from people who are just bombing hospitals. Hear you advocating for that.
And that is part of the reason why Israel is bombing hospitals.
Does anybody dispute
bombing hospitals is a war crime.
No, it's not.
Okay? Bombing hospitals is a war crime. In your conversation to
be clear, and I'm not saying all hospitals should be bombed, but there's no such thing as a building that is exempt from bombing if it's a valid military target.
Gone back and forth.
I'm not sticking up for bombing every hospital. I'm saying if you set up shop in a hospital, you make that hospital a valid military target, it is not illegal by international law.
And that is part of the reason why Israel is bombing hospitals.
Does anybody dispute
this? Hospitals is a war crime.
And then he goes on to talk about this. Are you submitting that Israel isn't conducting a genocide on Palestinians? Yes, I'm saying that. Doesn't mean that Israel isn't going too far, or that too many Palestinian civilians aren't dying, or that we don't need to find a way to end this conflict ASAP. It just means that Israel is not trying to literally destroy the Palestinian people of Gaza. I mean, how long ago was this? Does he still hold this position? October 16, 2024? If their intent is to destroy the population of Gaza, one would think they would kill them off at a higher rate than the birth rate in that region, which they are currently not doing. This was May 20th, 2024. An obvious genocide that the ICJ opined was not plausibly a genocide gotcha. I don't know when this happened, but it's fucked up to see. I've spoken to Hutch, numerous times. He's kind of, I think I've been the the lefty that he felt comfortable bringing on a show to ask why do lefties believe X or Y, and I would try to explain it to him. He was not like this. This seems to be rapid radicalization that has happened over the past year or so. It's really fucked up and sad to see.
Don't let this happen to you. Go to serfscoffee.com to order the only end-to-end owned indigenous coffee company that delivers blood-free, conflict-free, and cruelty-free beans right to your door. 0% of people who drink serfscoffee.com have exploded spontaneously. By ordering right now, you get 10% off plus free shipping, and it's the best way to enjoy delicious coffee while not exploding. That's serfscoffee.com, serfscoffee.com. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. This video wouldn't be at all possible without the financial support of all the people whose names you see on the screen right now. And if you want to unlock secret bonus episodes, content that we can't post anywhere else, or get the videos early before anyone else gets to see them, please go on to patreon.com/theserfs. For as little as $1, you can help support this channel and help make more videos like this possible. Our executive producers are Anna Loves Riley, Adrian McCarthy, Bobby Lasers, Cheryl Alvarez, Comrade Junkie, Doug Caddy, Everything Important, Garrett Sandoval, Hagbard Celine, Jimmy Sombrero, Multimondi, Omni, Political Papi, Preston Kroll, Quiet 185, Richard Boehm, Riley and Anna, Roller Dragon, Cernicus, Stellar Gwyn, Sebastian Demel, Tigwig, Trav, and Words Greenwood. And also, it wouldn't be possible without all the names you see on the screen right now. Again, if you want to help produce this content, it's only made possible through the funding of our patrons.